And we're back with a very special guest, Esther Panitch, who on two levels I agree with her on. A, that she's part of the World Zionist Congress, the Jewish Future Slate number 20. It's a lot to say in one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a state representative in Georgia, Esther Panitch. So please tell us a little about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me on, Gabe. This is Abe. Oh my God. Thank you for having me on, Abe. You want to
Everyone
do that
knows
again?
I'm gay. No.
No, no. Yeah, so
Let's
no,
keep it going.
I have been in session and then in trial, so I'm exhausted. So I am sorry.
And I want to
My
hear,
bad.
don't apologize. I'm happy to have you, and I love the moment we had. So go
Okay.
ahead.
So
Continue.
so I grew up in South Florida in Miami. I went to day school in Miami. It was a very large Jewish community. And then I went to college and law school at the University of Miami. Go Canes. I never thought I would leave Florida. Never planned to leave Florida. I got married. My husband, for his job, needed to spend time at the closest regional office. So we moved to Atlanta, which was supposed to be for 2 years. We had 3 kids under 4 at the time. And then we really loved Atlanta. We loved being in the South. It's beautiful. We get change of seasons, which we never really had I never really had growing up. He's from Philly. And so people are lovely. They're kind for the most part. Obviously, there are not great people everywhere, but as a whole, it was a lovely place to raise kids. And then when Trump ran for office at the time, I said, I got to do something. And but there was really no spot for me to run for. A friend of mine was running for the spot I currently have. And then I kind of just didn't think about politics for me for years until the person who had this position decided he was running for state senate. And he called me and he said, would you run? And I ignored him because I wasn't interested. My kids had just gone off to college. My law practice was going really well. Politics is ugly. So I wasn't really interested. A few months later, I get a call from him again. And the person running for attorney general in Georgia, who was also a state senator, and they said, do you realize that there's only one Jewish member in the state house and he's not running again? So there will be 0 Jews in state government, in the legislature, if you don't run. And I kind of just turned to my husband and I said, well, if that's true, then unless you could think of a reason I shouldn't run, I'm going to run because that's a bridge too far for me. So I ran. I kept thinking someone else would put their name in and I could kind of bow out, but there was really a need for it. And I'm not really into you're there for a time such as this, but if there was something divine about it, I was in the right place at the right time.
So, yeah, so this is an extraordinary moment in so many layers of American politics, Jewish peoplehood, America's role in the country, which being, again, someone whose parents are by the Holocaust, my fuse is very short for the inappropriate language and the angst and the violent rhetoric and the burning of the American flag and the Israeli flag. It's almost like this country is so not about accountability, not just now. I mean, it's clear all the way along, but it's all the way along since Trump, I should say. I think that was the critical turning point where people were allowed to be like him. It was like license to anything but short, but kill. And now these people who are in the streets threatening Jews want to have the license to kill like they're doing over there in the Middle East. So it's a challenge. So are you treated differently for being the lone Jew in politics in Georgia? Does anyone say anything?
Well, it's usually me that's saying something because I still can't get past that there's only one Jewish person in a group that is 200, it's 180 and 56. So 236 members. There should be more. Proportionately for the state by population, we should have 4 members. So there are Muslims, the Muslims had 4 members, now they're down to 3, but they're proportional with the population. We're not. And so I kind of wondered why, and there's only 2 judges, 2 superior court judges, which is our highest trial court in the state, who are Jews. So it got me wondering, why are people, Jews, not running for office? And the only thing I thought of, and I'm not from here, so I don't have this institutional history, but Leo Frank was lynched in Georgia, not that far from where I live in Sandy Springs. I mean, he was lynched in Marietta, which is not that far. It's Metro Atlanta.
Right.
And the Jewish community just, I think, felt like they were too afraid to really be out there. And so, because he was lynched by people involved in government, this wasn't just, a group of
Random
extremists,
KKK.
random people. These were correct. These were officials who participated in the lynching. So that's pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
So I don't actually know, and I'm sure there are many reasons, but that's the reason that I kind of understood. So I feel like it is a point that I have to continue to make, to show people realize I'm the only one. I shouldn't be the only one. And for the Jewish community to realize it. We were all caught off guard. None of us were following that the prior one was the only Jewish member. And then, and I'm hoping one day I don't have to say it anymore, because there will be more. But yeah, I don't know, they get treated differently, but because some people are just not afraid to say anti-Semitic things to me. So, I don't know. They feel like they have license to, and it's really more on my party than the Republicans.
Well, and it's interesting because that actually does tie us right into the conversation about the World Zionist Congress and what that role is in my mind, because I guess I'm not a politician at all. I just speak very politically. But I would imagine that if their mission is to spend X amount of dollars, which sounds like $1 billion a year, towards initiatives that help Jews in the diaspora and in Israel, which just being able to think that we're going to go to Israel in October and vote for this kind of stuff, I'm like, it's too much to even contemplate. And I came so late into this process, like the night before the being able to sign up, like literally hours before. And then I was like, yeah, I'd love to do this. I go, well, get your application and you have until midnight. And I was like, anyway, but the thing is that earmarking dollars for this kind of support within our community, I mean, you see how organized the opposition is. And I'm not talking about the Christian nationalists, because they own this whole, they own everything, right? But I feel like it's not only about helping, JCCs at this point. I mean, in order for American Jewry to be this safe space, like we have to come, it's not only into, we're proving now that everyone's saying, oh, the Jews run Hollywood, they run the media. It's the opposite. I'm in the entertainment industry. What's going on now is a complete not running anything but away from the attacks that we're getting. And in the media, you'd appreciate this. My lawyer, who is also a professor here in Southwestern in Los Angeles, and also started an independent film company that kind of finances independent filmmakers, and Zeka.org. She's awesome. And she wanted it, she's originally Israeli. She's here in America and wanted to write a law review article on media bias against Israel. And she had me do a lot of the research. So I'm literally coming off the heels of being so horrified. I'll send it to you. It's really good. It's called Words Matter, because the history of our media that goes, way back especially the New York
Right.
Times was the most guilty. You know, one of the people we interviewed, this woman, Lauren Leff, who wrote the book Buried by the Times, which is how the Times intentionally kept the Holocaust off the pages and didn't put it on page one until November of 1942. Now, that was not news.
Right.
That was succumbing to the pressure to finally, oh, okay, we're bombing places. Okay, let's, whatever. So yeah, we're at a disadvantage. And again, I have this commitment. It sounds like you have it intrinsically or instinctively to just kind of show up like the way you showed up to get elected. It's like you have to have a spine of steel to deal with whatever is going to be around us. And that's what I think is we're called to do now.
Right. And I mean, I think I realized no one's coming to help us.
Yeah.
I grew up I'm a 70s baby. And so I grew up Justice League, all the Saturday morning cartoons with Wonder Woman and Superman. No one's coming. I mean, it's up to us. And if we don't step up, even when it's uncomfortable, nobody else will. So
Yeah, no,
I believe everybody has some talent to do something. Mine is this. I can speak to an audience. I can persuade people. And I know the law, so I can help in that area. But everybody's has some talent, and it's time that we all use it
everybody.
because
I
correct, everybody
yeah,
who can. Yeah, we don't
Amer
have the luxury of waiting because only bad things happen.
no, it's like I wrote a piece about how the assimilation that so many American Jews are kind of fall prey to in order to be part of this culture and this kind of this aspirational society that America has turned into over the past 20 years, where it's all about designer brands and showing people off and one-upping each other. And it started with the keeping up with the Joneses in the 60s,
Mm.
but that was part of the advertising agencies that kind of turned the whole world up on its head. You know what I mean? But this whole aspirational idea, it takes so much more away from what Israel is, which is this inspirational space of home and hearth and coming back home. And that's what Zionism is. And it's just, how do we take back who we are is what needs to happen. And that's what I hope through this election and winning, that we get to have put a stake in the ground again here in America for the Jews who are so assimilated, that are suffering from this like assimilation cancer. It's like a
Yeah,
cancer, and either you can get better. Not everybody survives. Some people will
right,
be the ones that are joining the people with masks on saying death to Israel. These are Jews. These are Jews
right.
that will be exactly thrown on whatever the equivalent of the train is, should these people win.
I 100% agree. I saw some of this a year before October 7th. I had been elected before October 7th, and we were trying to pass the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism in Georgia. It had been a bill that was around a couple of years before I got there, or a year before I got there. I got there, and so I was there for a year, and it made it through the House, but it didn't make it through the Senate. But the criticism of it was really other people trying to define what Zionism is for me and for the Jewish community. And I kept saying, you don't get to define, you're the ones harassing us. You don't get to define what my experience is or my people's experience is.
Right.
So stop. We need to define it for ourselves. And we need to make sure I would never go in and tell somebody of another ethnicity or minority religion what their what anti whatever, what racism looks like.
Right.
I don't live in their shoes. I can't tell them what makes the hair on the back of their neck go up when somebody says something. When it happens. So there are things that somebody could say out of ignorance. I don't know that that's anti-Semitic if they're really trying to learn something, but but instinctively when somebody is trying to harm you or your people by
Right.
their words. And when people are maybe stupidly, but are joking. And you can tell the difference because, we're human beings and we have life experience. But for other people to tell Jews, well, that's not anti-Semitism, but this is, uh-uh, I had no patience for that. So then October 7th happened because we were saying um, treating Israel as if it doesn't have a right to exist is anti-Semitic because you would never say that about another country. And people kept pushing back. And then they saw it for themselves after October 7th. It was like the sewer grates went up and all the anger from the far left was unleashed. We'd always known about the far right because they were constantly open about their hatred. The far left, we kind of saw glimpses of, or at least I saw glimpses of, but I never expected what we saw starting October 8th. And it was horrific, but my colleagues were able to see what I had to deal with. And so because obviously I'm a threat magnet for Christian nationalists and far left. And so they saw it, and thank God they passed the anti-Semitism bill. But it came out of a belief that I have and still have that only people involved in the community can define their own experience. And that's what I think the beauty, or part of the beauty, of the World Zionist Congress is that we as a Jewish people can set the messaging of what we're willing to tolerate and what we're not. And, and then other people know. Excuse me. But nobody can do it for us. And this seems like the perfect forum to be able to do it together, to list our priorities and put the money where our mouths are, behind those priorities. So
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
it is a very exciting process. When I was contacted, I want to say in August, I had no idea, excuse me, what this really entailed. And I kind of went along on faith. I'm like, okay, well, there are other good people who are doing this. And I I took a World Zionist Organization test when I was in day school, when I was, in eighth grade, and I won. And they gave me a trip to Israel, which I couldn't take at the time, but
Wow.
I was familiar, excuse me, with the organization, but I had never voted in a World Zionist Congress election.
No, of course.
Only the last election did I hear anything about it. I didn't know anybody in the slates. And so now I'm trying to educate people. And even if they don't vote for our slate, which of course is what I want them to do, they need to get involved because
I absolutely agree. I tell, even if you don't vote for me, vote. Don't be like the
correct,
19 million people that sat out the election in November. That was enough to let you know that every vote matters. All
correct,
politics is local. Everything you can do, you need to do 100%.
correct. And so this is very exciting. I hope we get to go to Israel in October
I know. And so
together.
my sister
Um,
Vivian, when you come from parents with Holocaust, they're always like, you never know when the other shoe's going to drop. She's like,
correct,
don't get
correct.
excited. Don't get excited. You never know what's going to happen. But, I feel like if our slate is I can only say what I know I'm bringing to the party. I'm doing so much marketing on this and so much
Right.
direct messaging. And it's not just throwing up a post and wishing for the best. I am following everyone that looks at a story. I direct message them. I I
Excellent.
I'm dying
Excellent.
trying is how I look at it. Yeah.
I love that. Right. I love that. I'm dying trying.
Yeah.
Because right, I'm going to leave it all out there. I'm going to do everything I can, and I'm going to know that I did everything I can.
Yeah, I mean,
So
my story specifically is very emotional because I think back to my dad, who was a huge supporter of the World Zionist Organization from before he was thrown into the gulags in Siberia during World War II. And that was
wow.
when he got out, when they were freed, he ended up joining the Bricha, which is the organization that smuggled the Jews out of the DP camps, walking them through the Austrian Alps and the Italian Alps to boats that took them to Israel. And the thing about the Bricha specifically that really nobody knows about for the most part, especially in America, is they were the people that, with the Irgun and all these other organizations, started this country of Israel, the state of Israel, and with the police and the army and all like the organic people who like needed positions to kind of make the state happen. And the only reason he didn't end up in Israel is because he had a relative in America. And on the way to America, I have to show you this. On the way to America to meet his one relative that he didn't even really know he had, he met, bear with me, my mother on the boat coming to America called
Oh my God.
the Cargo of Hope in 1949. She who had survived Dachau and Yabba Dabba Doo. So they met and found love and blah, blah, blah. So but he was a staunch supporter of it. And an even more intense story about Zionists is with my mom. Recently, my mom passed in 2002. And I asked my sister to send me a bunch of pictures so I could donate them here to LA Holocaust Museum. So it's this huge box of images from our childhood in black and whites and pictures from my mom who was in the ghettos and the camps and all this other stuff. They were actually the DP camps. We find a manuscript that my mother was trying to write her life story that's never been finished. So my nephew and I are taking it on as a project to kind of leave. So it's first, second, and third generation telling the story and keeping the story. It's very emotional, but I owe it to them to make sure that they survived so that I can carry on the message of surviving, you know? Like I've been lucky. I didn't have to get off to a war and I had my own brutal war with drugs, whatever, but you know, that's something we all learn how to survive, whatever is coming at us, right? So it means a lot to be part of this at a moment when it's so important. Like 5 years ago, it wouldn't have had a different impact, you know?
Correct.
If I
Oh
even
yeah.
would have cared, you know what I mean?
Right. Right. And what a beautiful tribute, Abe, to your parent, to your mother, and to your
It's
parents.
it's like such a responsibility. It really is. But I'm living up to it to the best of my ability, right? And I plan to take whatever steps I can. It's in my book a little bit, their story. The second book's gonna definitely be more of that story. My mom's book that my nephew and I are gonna do. My dad, who was the Bricha story, which I so much want to tell. I'm part of this thing called the Brigade, which is this entertainment industry group that's working together to kind of figure out how to combat all this stuff that's going on in the entertainment industry. But the producer of a movie about Theodore Herzl direct messaged me and said, I see that you're running and I'm so whatever. And I was like, could not believe. So he said, I'm telling my children to vote for you. You have to be American, and he's not. And then he goes, oh, and by the way, I did a documentary called The Long Way Home, which is about the Bricha, which I had no idea existed because I found out about my dad after he died. He died when I was in high school, died very young.
Oh, right.
So it's this journey to find out all this stuff, and it's a lot. And then there's one other story. I'll stop at this. My uncle was the conductor of the Vilna Symphony Orchestra, and when he was in the ghetto, he still had the dispensation to go conduct the orchestra and have to go back to the ghetto at night. And him and the other
Wow.
musicians smuggled all the instruments into the ghetto, including a piano that they disassembled and reassembled
Oh
piece
my
by
God.
piece, and did the Vilna Ghetto Orchestra, which is documented. And they recently found a photo of the orchestra and him sitting there like this like he had come dressed from the Vilna Orchestra to the ghetto in the same tails, tuxedo, with these. It's just so intense. Anyway, he wrote a piece of music in the concentration camp where he was killed about, it's kind of a song about resistance, a silent resistance to the torture and once you're in the camp, it's like, call it a day. And he got killed, and 75 years after his death, the Holocaust Museum found these notes in a book that one of the survivors wrote and said, this is a song we would sing as this, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I'm trying to take that little piece of music, and I've been successful so far at having it translated into which is why It Won't Be Silent is the name of the project. It was originally written as Stay Silent, Don't Let Them Take Your Tears. And me, who's been on the front lines of even as far back as the Vietnam War, to say no, couldn't just see him being left as someone who stayed silent. I wanted to give him a name and a face and a moment. So I've been on this journey with this piece of music since the Nazis were marching in Charlottesville, by the way. That's when all this kind of started.
Wow.
That we've had it done in we did it in Mexico in Spanish, we did it in Germany in Yiddish and English and in German, and I just had a demo of it in Israel. So I want to take this song, which came from the ashes of the Holocaust, as this universal message that brings people together in peace and music and blah. And that's a project that, when I say dying trying, that's why I'm not dead. I know that. I know that for sure. And this becomes like, oh my God, and all these great people I'm meeting through this process. And it's just a reconnection to our spirit and our heritage and our religion. And I'm not a religious person at all, but it's just what a peoplehood we have.
Oh yeah. Really, I wish I appreciated it as much when I was younger, but I'm glad I'm not too old to do something about appreciating it more now.
Yeah. Well,
So
I am old, so I'm glad I'm doing this before I'm dead. You know what I mean?
yeah, you look young, but so I don't know how old you are, but you mentioned Vietnam, so I figure, I'm in the right decade. Sorry,
I
there's
mean, I
pollen
wasn't
in the
in the
hill.
war, but I was in grade school. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
I wasn't quite getting what is it when they used to make the people get drafted. I wasn't in the draft, but
Ah, right. You weren't burning your card, right?
no, but it's just, and I also think back in terms of just to bring it back into politics for a minute, that America was so on edge back in the 60s and 70s. It's almost, on some level, it's almost worse then, because we were losing so many Americans in the process, as opposed to here, we're just losing our dignity and you know what I mean?
Well, right. It's a
We're
different kind
not
of
losing.
danger.
Yeah, it's definitely different. But like, I just remember every night on the 10 o'clock news, they would run the people who were killed in
Oh yeah.
Vietnam. I mean, that's like, it was like we were all in mourning. I mean, it's different now. People are mourning their 401ks. It's different. It's a different
Right.
kind of horror, but it's horrible for sure.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
So
you have so many projects. I want
I
to see
know,
them as
you'll
they
see
come
them.
to fruition.
I'll throw you one more.
Okay. Because I'm a lawyer. I don't think creatively like you do.
No,
So
that's all
this
I
is
do. Yeah,
right.
it's a curse because you make no money, but it's all good vibes.
I understand. But right. But the other side of my brain is the one that works than yours.
But
So
this is
um
one last thing about my mom. So she was a singer before the war, but of course the war kind of ruined her voice, whatever. And when she went to this DP camp called St. Attilian, which was a monastery in Landsberg, which is outside of Munich, uh, she and her sister both survived. Her sister was a pianist, my mother was a singer. And within the first month at the camp, they met like 6 or 7 musicians and started the ex-concentration camp orchestra, and were sent from DP camp to DP camp, because music is healing, and is music
right.
love, and music is everything. So she came from a very musical family anyway. That's why she had the brother. And and they were like, it was kind of like touring with the bus around, the Germany, and where all the DP camps were bringing music, and they performed for the Nuremberg trial judges, And then when
Wow. Oh
I
my
know,
God.
and then when Leonard Bernstein came to to Munich to conduct the Munich Symphony Orchestra in 1948, they were on strike because he was Jewish. They didn't want him, you know. And he found out about them and went out and conducted the orchestra a couple times. So it's another interesting story of how music helps people get through trauma, right?
Wow. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, you're talking about Nuremberg. That's one of the things that I studied when I was learning about the Holocaust because I wanted to be a lawyer. And this is trying to get some justice, for the victims, some accountability. I don't know that they were going to get justice, but some accountability for the Nazis. And that's one of the things that kind of motivated me because I was young when I learned about it. Um, and I actually
Who
want to go visit. I've never been. I've been to Europe. I just haven't been to Germany.
It's
Um,
kind of awesome. I stayed away for years, but what was the name of the
yeah,
young?
no, I think now I mean, they have stood up for Israel. So
Oh,
I would be
major.
very happy. I'd rather go there than other countries in Germany right now. I mean,
Yeah.
other countries in Europe right now. So
Munich
I'm
is so
actually trying to
beautiful.
plan a trip because I also haven't been to the death camps and I feel like an obligation to witness what we still can.
Me and my
But
sisters went to Dachau together and stood in like the same spaces as,
wow,
it's less moving and more freeing and more empowering than I expected it. It was less
good.
about sadness and more about, wow, she survived this in the coldest of darkest of winters with no coats, and just all the stories she would tell us because she was a storyteller and too much and too much, whatever. But what's the name of that lawyer that was the American lawyer who did the Nuremberg trial? What was his? That's like he became the, I forget
Well,
his.
there was Judgment at Nuremberg. Well, that's one of the movies, but
Yeah, that was a great movie.
I guess it was Spencer Tracy who I'm trying to think who he played. Chief
Yeah,
Trial Judge Dan Haywood. That was a military tribunal. There are other judges
yeah, no,
there,
no, he
but
wasn't a judge.
I
He
think
was
he
one
was.
of
Oh,
he
the
was
chief
one of the
prosecutor.
lawyers. Yeah, a young
Yeah,
Jewish American.
yeah. He just recently died in the last few
Yes,
years.
yes,
Um,
Burn something.
I'm gonna look it up because now it's gonna
Yeah,
bother me
yeah.
until I
I mean, I
can't
was gonna
until I
start
figure
with
it
it.
out.
I saw you looking, so I.
Nuremberg. Yes, sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to battle. So the negative about being in Atlanta in the spring is the pollen.
Oh,
Um, okay, let's see. It said the main chief prosecutor at Nuremberg was Robert Jackson, representing the United States. I don't know if was he Jewish?
no, no, there was
Other
like
prosecutors,
Bernard or
um, Ben Ferenc.
that's
I,
him.
I I
Yeah,
may be
yeah.
mispronouncing his name.
No, no, that's it. That's it.
Benjamin Ferenc,
Yes,
Ferencz. Yep.
yes, he's a fascinating character. There's a
Yeah.
documentary about it. Yeah,
I may go back and watch it this weekend. I was in trial and now I'm done, and my brain is a little dead. So I need to just slowly get
yeah,
back to reality. So I try to watch things during when I can, and this is
right,
one of those
right.
times. But
Well, the
um,
Housewives of Beverly Hills is definitely clean out whatever you need kind of to forget about. They'll kind
that's
of.
true. That's true. Yes. No, I love
Although
TV.
there's an incredible series that's on Netflix right now called Adolescence. Have you heard of this?
I've heard of it. My husband saw it, and he
Okay.
was watching it at night, and I went into the room. He's like, "You're not going to want to see this before you go to sleep." So, plus, I've done juvenile defense
uh,
as a lawyer, so I was a public defender for many times. So
yeah,
it's um, yeah, maybe that's what I'll watch too. So we'll see. I have a whole
yeah,
weekend.
right. So I guess it's a pleasure to think that you and I are going to break uh, PETA in
Challah.
October.
Yes.
Challah,
Yes, as long
PETA.
as it's not matzah. Yes,
No, no,
yes,
no,
I'm done
matzah.
with the matzah already. I've had enough.
I just want
But
to read, I'm just going to read you, because you mentioned matzah, I'm going to read you the last paragraph of my book, which
okay,
really meets the moment that we're in, coincidentally. So just
Is it
quick,
on Amazon? Because I always buy books of people I know.
yes,
Whether or
won't
not
be,
I end up reading them is something else. But I have a lot of friends who are authors, and I always buy their books.
yes, won't be silent. It's on Amazon. But
Okay.
this is leading up. So this I wrote around the election of 2020, the result of that. So it's and I had built this beautiful Won't Be Silent community that was very activated into that moment. So this is why it's very timely. The extraordinary Won't Be Silent community that has emerged through this project with its message of hope that rose from the ashes of the Holocaust will help build a brighter future so that another Holocaust won't happen. Despite this latest crop of misguided, propagandized, terrorist-loving, helicoptered, far-left, democracy-abandoning lemmings and assorted Islamist anti-Semites threatening to wipe out the Jews, trust me, they will not win in the end. Let's face it, if Jews were meant to be wiped off the face of the earth, we would not have survived 40 years in the desert after being slaves in Egypt building those fucking pyramids. The constipation from the matzah alone would have taken us out.
We
But
are stubborn fuckers. We certainly are.
yeah, don't sit on your laurels, kids. Our work has just begun. The forces of evil that brought my grandparents to their violent, unfortunate deaths, coupled with what my parents had to endure, are not that far off on the horizon. If you squint hard enough, you can see the foreshadows of an America you won't recognize. Lord knows we already hear mumbling, rumbling, and the drumbeat of a new kind of war by evil factions here and abroad, which is why we can't, must not, and won't be silent. And definitely not the end. So that is what brings us
Oh, I
to
love
this,
that.
definitely what brings us to this moment where we get a chance to make a difference. And that's all we can do is just hope to make a difference.
That's right. And work towards it, which we are doing.
Totally.
So
And
I'm very excited, and I can't wait to give you a hug in Jerusalem,
totally.
unless we meet first. But yes,
You never know. There's months, months can happen.
yes, yes.
Well, again, everyone, Jewish Future Slate number 20. I will
Yep.
have a
Go
link
vote.
in the description, and please vote for us because we're worth it.
Thank you, Abe.
Bye,
And think of all the
darling.
pictures and TikToks we can make while we're over there.
Hello, no kidding.
I'll need your help because I really am quite dumb when it comes to
I got
TikTok.
it. I could do it in my sleep.
Good. Perfect.
Be well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.